What's good, everybody? This is Robo back with another college football video, and this will be my week 3 picks. Kind of an ugly week matchup wise, but still a ton of games to make picks for. Real quick, let's go ahead and recap last week's picks. Some tough injury luck, but a 24-16 record against the spread for another good week, taking the season total to 56 wins and 32 losses on spread picks. This week starts on Thursday night, so let's go ahead and get started with those games. After the huge win against Texas A&M last week, Miami takes on Bethune-Cookman Thursday night. A nice chance for Miami to run up some points and keep looking good, as I have them coming away with a 52-6 victory. Memphis hosts Navy on Thursday night as well, and I think they can cover the spread with a 34-14 win against a struggling Navy group. Friday brings us Maryland and Virginia. I think Taulia can lead the Maryland offense to a big day in this game. Give me the Terps to cover with a 38-21 win. Army heads to UTSA in a game I could see being really low scoring. I think Army can keep this one close, but I don't think they'll come away with the win. Give me Army to cover, but fall to UTSA 24-17. Another military program plays Friday with Air Force taking on Utah State. Another game I see being pretty competitive. I like Utah State to cover the 9.5 points, but Air Force to get the win 27-20. Saturday kicks off at noon, starting with Florida State heading out to Boston College. I see the Seminoles dominating this game all the way with a final score of 42-10. Penn State at Illinois has been talked about as one of the better games of the week, but I'm not convinced of that at all right now. Illinois has not looked good whatsoever, and Penn State looks really strong. Give me the Penn State Nittany Lions to cover 38-17. LSU looked incredible after a quarter or so in week 2, and I think they keep that momentum going on the road against Mississippi State. This game will probably be a bit tight for a while, but I like LSU 34-20. Kansas State at Missouri could be one of the best games of the week. I know Kansas State is a much better team here, but this will be their first road test up against a team who took Georgia to the brink last year. I like the Wildcats to come away with this one 30-23. Louisville at Indiana could be a solid game. I'm more comfortable with the Cardinals covering, although I think it'll be a close one. Give me Louisville by 10, 34-24. Buffalo hosts Liberty on Saturday and enters as home underdogs. I think they can steal this game, but I know Liberty's the better team and should come out with the win. Give me Liberty and the points in a tight one, 28-23. Wisconsin's got off to a rough start to the year, not looking too impressive in the win over Buffalo and last week's loss to Washington State. I think they take a step forward here with a big win, 41-20 over Georgia Southern. Wake Forest is coming off a solid win over Vandy last week and now travels to a solid Old Dominion squad. I think Wake is the better team here by a good margin, and I think they cover with a final score of 38-21. Iowa State heads out to Ohio to face the Bobcats in a tough matchup. Curtis Rourke is healthy but banged up. I think the Cyclones come away with this one, but it'll be close. I'll go with a 21-17 final score. Utah gets a tune-up game against Weber State, where I'm assuming they roll with the backup quarterback again. They should win this one easily, though, 42-10. Notre Dame has been dominant so far this season, and that should continue here against a really bad Central Michigan squad. I'll take Notre Dame big, 45-6. Georgia has been unbelievably dominant on the defensive side of the ball so far, and South Carolina cannot protect whatsoever. I'm not sold on the Georgia offense enough yet to think they'll cover with a lot of points, but this one probably won't be that close. Georgia wins this one 38-13. Alabama is coming off a disastrous loss to Texas at home and is in need of a big-time statement win. I think they head to South Florida and cover on the road 49-13. Oregon State has an interesting matchup against a tough San Diego State defense, but offensively they have not been up to par whatsoever. I think the Beavers and the offensive line can clear the 24 points with a 38-13 victory. Tulsa gets the opportunity to host Oklahoma, but it probably won't be a fun game for the fans as Dylan Gabriel's been locked in so far. I like the Sooners here in a blowout, 45-14. North Carolina would probably be favored by a lot more, but they played a pretty rough game last week and nearly lost to Appalachian State. But home again, I think they play a better game in this one and take the win 31-20. Northwestern got a huge first win last week and played a really strong game overall, but now they head to a tough road matchup against Duke, where I don't see them in this game whatsoever. I like Duke to cover the points pretty easily, 35-10. Iowa enters this game as massive favorites, higher than their point total in the first 2 games at 28.5. That seems like a bit of a trap, as I think they score over 30 this week, but I'll trust Western to get points on the board and cover that spread in a 34-6 loss to the Hawkeyes. Rutgers has looked really solid through 2 games so far, so I'm going to ride with them still in a tough matchup with Virginia Tech. I'm not a fan of the near touchdown spread, so I'll take Tech to cover, but Rutgers gets the win 23-20. UConn takes on FIU in a game that should be low scoring. UConn is the better team in the matchup and favored by a touchdown. I think they take the win by 10, 27-17. App State comes off a crushing loss in overtime last week to North Carolina and can either bounce back big or let that decide their season. I think they'll battle back with a close win over ECU, 30-23. Ohio State looked better on offense last week, but they still couldn't put it all together, and now they face the Western Kentucky team who can put up some points. I think they get the offense going, but the defense takes a slight step back, and the Hilltoppers cover as the Buckeyes win 49-24. Texas A&M takes on UL Monroe in a tune-up game. They should handle this game from start to finish, and I've got them winning by a final score of 45-10. Tulane missed Michael Pratt last week big time as it kept it close for a while thanks to a good game from backup quarterback Kai Horton, and Pratt is questionable for this game as well. I trust Horton to cover the spread here, but if Pratt plays, I think they win big. I'll go with a 34-20 final. Washington blew the doors off of Michigan State last year, and now they come back with an improved team and a ton of controversy on the MSU sidelines. I think MSU comes out and plays some inspired football in the first half, but Washington's too much and pulls away to cover the spread closely, 41-24. Staying in state with Washington State, the Cougars get a tune-up game to calm down after last week's huge win over Wisconsin. They should handle Northern Colorado pretty easily, 52-6. UCLA will be starting Dante Moore again after a strong first start last week, and he'll get a cupcake game against NC Central. UCLA should win this game pretty easily, 49-14. Tennessee at Florida is the biggest game of the week most likely, with Tennessee entering as just under touchdown favorites. I think this one goes down to the wire, but Tennessee's athletes and big arm quarterback pull away late with a 35-27 victory in Gainesville. Staying in the SEC, Auburn will host Samford in a tune-up game after a tough road win against Cal last week. The Tigers should handle business with a 48-10 win at home. Louisiana Tech is a tough team to predict this season, but they host the worst defense in college football through 2 weeks in North Texas. I think that matters a lot here as Tech gets whatever they want and wins in a close one, 41-35. Nebraska comes into week 3 without a win on the schedule, so they should be more than hungry for a big game here, especially on offense. We know they can defend, but Jeff Sims has been abysmal so far. I think they get a win under their belt this week with a 30-13 blowout over Northern Illinois. Vanderbilt heads to Vegas to face UNLV in a game that honestly could go either way. I have not been impressed with Vandy so far, and they've been outgained by lesser teams, but I just don't trust UNLV either, and I think Vandy sneaks away with a win against the spread, 30-24. Cincinnati had an incredible win over Pitt last week thanks to some great defense, and even as 2 touchdown favorites, I think Emory Jones continues to play well, and the Bearcats win big again over Miami, Ohio, 34-13. Oklahoma State got the job done last week on the road, and now back at home, I'm going to trust them once again against a solid South Alabama squad. Give me the Cowboys to win and cover 27-17. Texas Tech just suffered a tough loss at home against Oregon to drop to 0-2, so you know they'll be eager for that first win here against Tarleton State. I like the Red Raiders to win big here, 52-14. UAB hosts Louisiana Saturday night, and this one's basically a pick'em. Both teams are at a similar level, so I'll go with UAB at home, 33-30. Troy hosts James Madison, who's coming off an emotional win last week against Virginia, and if they don't come out hungry, Troy will take this game. With that said, I think JMU is a stronger team and takes the win in an upset, 27-24. San Jose State heads to Toledo to take on a strong Rockets offense, and this will be a tough one for them, but I think they keep it a game. I like Toledo to win, but just miss the cover, 31-27. Michigan starters have been dominant for 3 quarters of football in each game so far, and Bowling Green comes to town under the lights in the Big House. This one will get ugly fast. I typically fade Michigan against the spread, but I think they score early and often with a lot of excitement and get a win 45-3 over the Falcons. Ole Miss just picked up a big road win over Tulane without Michael Pratt last week, and now can't take Georgia Tech lightly as they've got a decent group too. I think Ole Miss is clearly the better team in every aspect, and they should cover this one if they're on point, 41-20. Arkansas hosts BYU Saturday night and enters the game as 8-point favorites. A lot of analytics point towards the BYU side, but I think Arkansas bounces back after not the greatest showing last week, and they cover in this one with a 31-20 win. Kentucky's another SEC team who struggled last week and couldn't cover, and yet again I'm going back to them to cover this week against a really rough Akron squad who nearly lost to Morgan State last week. Give me the Cats 41-13. Syracuse has been on an absolute fire to start the season, but now they head into a tough game against Purdue. If this was in the Dome, I'd be all over Syracuse. I still am, but a bit more hesitant on the road as I'll take Cuse in this one 34-30. West Virginia hosts Pitt and will look for vengeance after last year's loss on the road in the rivalry game. Pitt is a tough beat, especially coming off a loss to Cincinnati, but I still like the Mountaineers in a nail-biter 24-23. Texas comes off maybe the biggest win of the season for anyone so far, going into Tuscaloosa and taking down Alabama. I think they may have a slight hangover here against a decent Wyoming squad that took down Texas Tech in week 1. Give me Wyoming to cover here and a loss to Texas 38-13. Oregon has been fantastic offensively so far and just picked up a huge road win at Texas Tech thanks to a late score and a pick 6. Now they'll host outmatched Hawaii and should win this game pretty easily, 56-17. New Mexico and New Mexico State will face off Saturday night in what should be a pretty good one. I'll side with the Lobos at home in a tight game, 27-24. Stanford comes off an ugly beatdown from USC, but they get a tune-up matchup with Sacramento State. I think the offense gets back on track, but defensively not as much. They still win this game pretty easily though, 38-14. Clemson looked awful for a half of football last week as at one point the game was 21-17, but the game ended ugly as maybe Clemson found some momentum. I like them to continue that level of play with a 41-13 win here over FAU. TCU needs a win here against a decent Houston team who just lost in a heartbreaking comeback game against Rice. I think they do just that, as I've got them coming away with a tough road win, 38-27. Colorado's looking to start 3-0 before two huge matchups against Oregon and USC coming up, and this one should be much easier than the past two. Vegas learned their lesson, and this line is pretty high. If it were closer to 21 or so, I'd love it, but after all the talk of the Colorado State coach has been having, I'll still take the Buffs here, 41-17. Fresno State will be on the road against Arizona State in a late one Saturday night, and honestly, I think Fresno State is just the far better team here. Give me Fresno and the points, 30-24. Kansas was firing on all cylinders offensively last week against Illinois, and Nevada is not the same level of opponent. Even on the road with a huge spread, I like Kansas big, 45-13. The final game of the week is in Arizona as the Wildcats take on UTEP, who looked awful last week getting crushed by Northwestern. I don't see that changing here at all, so I like Arizona minus 17 with a 38-14 final score to wrap up the week. That's it for my week 3 picks. Let's hope for another strong week against the spread and of course some exciting football games, even with the lesser exciting week on paper. Other than that, thanks for watching this video. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.